And make sure you are laying just completely under it so all the sand and dirt falls right in your eyes, and don't wear any eye protection. That's key. What's going on, guys, and welcome to today's video. And today we are going to be fixing the crash damage on the TRX. And now, no, I've never talked about this on the channel or in any videos, but when I went to the sand dunes with Jesse, I kind of joked with him that, man, every single TRX that ever goes to the sand dunes and posts pictures online has the front bumper skid plate dented in. You know, oh, that's funny, you know, every single one has it. And within like 10 minutes of playing out in the sand, I ended up nosing over a sand dune, stuffing the nose of the truck into the sand, and when it happened, I immediately went, yeah, I bet we just dented the bumper. We got out, and I've got a dent here in the lower bumper piece. Now, like I said, I didn't really show that on camera any or in that video when we were out playing in the sand because it wasn't that big of a deal. But it finally gave me an excuse to do something to the truck that I wanted to do day one that I kind of didn't want to waste the money on, which is the new black lower bumper skid plate trim piece, whatever you want to call it. I believe it's the Ram Rebel with the night package, or the black trim group package on a Ram Rebel comes with a black lower bumper skid plate trim piece, which matches all of the rest of the TRX bumper. Now, why did they put a gray lower piece on an all black truck with everything all black? I have no idea when they already had a black one available. It makes absolutely no sense. But like I said, I wanted to do it day one, but didn't want to spend the $200-300 on that piece. Going to the sand dunes and denting and smashing it, it gave me an excuse to spend the money, fix the truck, and get it looking how I wanted it to look. So hopefully today we're gonna get this thing pulled into the garage. I'm gonna do it on the ground, not up in the shop, up on the lift. I'm gonna do it on the ground as I assume most people would do it, and see if I can, you know, do this thing. I've done one other of these on a friend's truck, but it again was at the shop, up in the air, a little nicer to work on. So we'll see how horrible or not it is to get this thing off and swapped out. And it's not fun to do, but we'll see. Now, let me show you, I guess, the damage to mine, and then, like I said, we'll get it in the garage and start tearing this thing apart. So, with the horrible shadows here with the sun, but if you guys can see right there, this whole kind of corner is shoved in. And then if we look further underneath, this whole bottom piece is dented up pretty severely, kind of rubbing on that lower skid plate also. So all of it's kind of smashed up here on the right, or excuse me, left front side. I did try to take and beat it out because I assumed this metal's thin enough that it was gonna pop back out. It did not pop back out. So we'll get this thing pulled in the garage and torn apart, and hopefully get it looking a little bit better, cooler with a black lower bumper trim piece, and not smashed up on a brand new truck. All right, so we are in the garage now, and I've got my kind of tools set out and the new piece laid out over here. And again, that's what our new front lower trim piece, whatever you want to call it, is. And this is the part number if you guys are interested in looking at pricing and availability. That, like I said, is the part number of the Black Rebel Night Edition, Black Edition, whatever you want to call it. That's what that thing is there. Look it up, see what you can find online for pricing, and go from there. So now that we've got this thing ready to start pulling, I do already have my lower skid plate pulled over here. If you guys own a TRX or have done an oil change or whatever, you guys have had this thing off before. It is just some 16mm bolts. These both go up at the very front. You do not remove those all the way. You just loosen them because they are slotted up here where the bolts can slide out. And then you've got two more 16s on each side. You can go ahead and get those pulled out. Now, hopefully your skid plate looks like mine, and if so, that means you've been using your TRX like they were built to, or at the edge of how it was built to, something, but hopefully your skid plate has some skid marks on it, because that means you've been using it. But hopefully your lower bumper trim piece isn't smashed. That means you've done dumb things and it didn't go well. But step one here of removal is going to be getting these inner fender splash shield things out of the way. Now you'll need to get these out of the way because some of the bumper bolts are going to be accessed through here, and you are going to need to unplug the wiring harness for the front bumper through this access. Now these are just a couple of 8mm bolts. You can take these 3 out, and then the 2 that are on the frame rail are actually kind of cool because they've got a big slot, so you can just loosen those and slide that piece up and out of the way. So like I said, these inner ones you just loosen up, and then we'll just need to go ahead and completely pull out the 3 on the perimeter. And make sure you are laying just completely under it so all the sand and dirt falls right in your eyes, and don't wear any eye protection. That's key. So now that we've got that pulled out, I will try to get you guys kind of up under here. Now this is the driver's side of the bumper looking up at that wheel well area where we just pulled that splash shield. And now if we look here, we've got a main front bumper harness connection that we are going to need to undo. And there is a red lock tab that's hopefully going to slide out of the way, and mine slid out of the way even after playing in dirt and sand. And then we'll push this black plastic piece down on the back, and that should release as I'm doing this one-handed. The gray part that's going to pivot forward and finally release that connector. Like I said, that will pivot all the way forward, and then the connector is released. Now our bumper is fully unplugged, and we are ready to get the bumper bolts out. And here, again, this is that driver's side. The passenger side is going to be identical. We've got a big 18mm nut, an 18mm nut up here, and then really inconveniently located, we've got another 18mm nut that I can, there we go. That is right behind the frame rail. It's kind of horrible to get to. I kind of get a wrench, an 18mm wrench up in there and kind of get it loose, and then you could sometimes get it the rest of the way out by hand. Once you get it loose, it's just going to be a fight regardless of how you get to it. All right guys, so now you can kind of see both of the top two. There's that top nut, which I can barely just get my finger on. And again, in the camera, it looks like there's tons of room, but you can just barely get a wrench back there and hopefully get it broken loose. Now, like I said, once you get it at least broken loose, at least on a nice fresh truck that's not been out in mud and nastiness, it's going to thread off by hand after a lot of fiddling. Now the two very side ones are very awesome, and you can just take a impact or socket and a wrench or whatever you've got. And those will come off very nicely. The Milwaukee up in there, and like I said, those ones are much nicer to get to. Now you're gonna wanna find some place to work with this bumper, whether that be on the ground, or I happen to have this bumper stand here, but you're gonna wanna find somewhere that you can, you know, throw some, a big blanket down or something, so you're not just scratching the heck out of this bumper while you're working on it. But once we've got that harness unplugged and all of those 18mm nuts, we should be able to just bring this thing straight off the front. And now we've got the whole bumper assembly off the truck. So now that we've got the bumper off and laying face down, we can start working at getting all of these fasteners off and out of the way. Now there is just an absolute ton of fasteners once you finally get this thing off. This is absolutely the worst part of it. We've got some 13 millimeters here. We've got an 8 millimeter. We've got some T40 Torxes here. There's just a ton of stuff layered on top of this because unfortunately we're gonna need to pull a lot of this metal structure off to be able to get all the way down here to the 13 millimeter bolts that bolt the skid plate to the main bumper piece. And you can't just get something under there because there is this plastic air ducting, which is sandwiched down with this main kind of crash bar, strengthening bar. So all of this has to get pulled up and out of the way, and it's just a massive amount of hardware. So get something so you can kind of organize your hardware, and you just got to start tearing stuff apart. Now, like I said, these are T40 Torx down here on the bottom. Let's see, we'll also have some wiring harnesses here connected. That one of these panel poppers makes a really good tool to get those out without hopefully breaking the wiring clips. Now we've got 13 millimeter bolts. We also have some 8 millimeter bolts. Here on the little side plastic pieces that apparently don't like to come off very nicely. We've got some 10 millimeter bolts holding these brackets to the fog light housings. Now on each side below those 8 millimeter bolts, we have some metal kind of plastic retaining clips. And again, I'm using that panel popper tool to get those things out of there. Now back to the 13s. Now up here across these top sections, we've got some bolts that are covered up by some plastic trim pieces. So with some pliers, we will kind of pinch the clips and be able to get those out of the way. So guys, here are those big kind of top pieces that you've got to take off, and then they have these clips here on the ends of them that you can just take and kind of squeeze with some pliers or needle nose and get those things unclipped. Now we've got more of those T40 Torx across the top. And now I think we are going to need to get this wiring harness unclipped so we can get this whole center section lifted up and out of the way. All right. So now that we got that whole centerpiece out, now one thing real quick guys, those little 10 millimeters that go into the plastic, those actually can stay in there. I threw those back in because that plastic piece comes right out with this. So no need to pull those little 10 millimeter bolts out of there. But here is the massive amount of hardware that you're left with just getting that piece off of this front bumper. Now we are kind of almost there. We've got these little 8s here on the side. We've got those clips that we pulled off. And then we've got a couple of 10 millimeter bolts here, and then all of these 13s that go all the way around over to those 10 millimeters over here. And then I think we are ready to pull this thing. So now, like I said, once we've got that structure off, we'll be able to get these last 13s, a couple of 10s, and I think the thing comes out. So guys, now that we've got that skid plate or this trim piece, whatever we're calling this thing, pulled off, we need to transfer all of these J-nuts. Now you may have to lift up on these J-nuts with a screwdriver, whatever. They will then pop off and go flying across the floor. But again, you will just kind of pry underneath that little tab. And then you can slide those J-nuts off there. We've got tow hook bezels, which are again just little 8mm nuts, and then the bezels will push out of the front. And you know, all of those J-nuts all the way across the top, those J-nuts, and then both the bezels. So now that we've finally got all of the hardware swapped over, we've got our bezels, we've got our 10mm nuts, we've got all of our J-nuts, we are ready to start kind of shoehorning this thing back together. Now, it would be helpful having a second person, but you guys know I'm here by myself, normally in the garage, so we will try to not just scratch absolutely everything up here. Yeah, just try and work this thing back together as nicely as possible. Once you kind of get it roughly, you'll be able to get all of those 13mm bolts, those 10mm bolts, and all of these side 13 mils all going back in, and start putting all of this hardware back together. So once we've got that all bolted in, obviously we get our big kind of crash bar main structure bolted on this thing. And guys, it's just obviously the reverse order, hopefully getting all the bolts back where they came from, and then we'll be ready to get it thrown on the truck. And guys, just like that, in a few hundred bolts, nuts, 13 mil, 10 mil, 8 mils, you've got that lower bumper trim on. Gee, it's so easy. But yeah, I mean, honestly, it's not that bad. It's just a ton of hardware. My goodness, I guess it's good it's not put on with 3 little clips and it could break off really easily, but that seems excessive on how much hardware there is in this thing. So now at this point, you're ready to make sure all your wiring harnesses are clipped back into place, double check, make sure all of the bolts are tight, and then you can go ahead and put it back on the truck. Now, hopefully you've got somebody else there helping you, one person on each side. You can get it slid into place, and then you'll be able to throw those 18mm nuts on. But yeah, that's it. It's a lot of hardware. So guys, obviously I need to throw on my little inner fender trim pieces, the skid plate, all of this stuff, but I've got the bumper bolted up and we can at least look at the finished final product. And yeah, it looks like how it should have came from the factory with everything black. I mean, why would Ram put a lower silver front bumper piece on when there's nothing else silver on the truck? All of the accents are black. There's nothing silver. Ram, what were you thinking making us do this? But I at least was taking care of two things. I took care of my dented up, smashed skid plate, and I got the truck looking like it should have from the factory, and that's always a good thing. Now guys, I'd get you some cool shots outside of the final product, but as you can see, it is completely pitch black outside. And I guess while we're on that subject of outside, let me show you Jeep guys that hopefully are still watching to the end of this video what we've got in the back of the silver 04. Now you guys can't really see, but this is a silhouette of a used transmission, and that is hopefully one of the final pieces for this thing to make it actually move down the road with more than first and second gear. So just bear with me guys, we'll get a transmission in this thing because it is actively in the back of the Jeep. So yeah, that'll probably be something you guys will see very shortly, me battling a nasty old transmission in and out of that 04 Grand Cherokee. But guys, that was honestly not too bad of a process. All the nuts and bolts come apart super easy since these are brand new trucks, but it's very hot in Kansas right now. Even at night, I'm in here sweating to death in the garage because I don't have any fan or any air circulation. So it was a very hot, sticky, sweaty procedure. But like I said, we've got the truck looking good. We fixed our crash damage, and that's what I've been wanting to do since day one, was get the black skid plate, and the sand dunes just helped me go ahead and spend that money. So guys, like I said, I will have the part number for that down in the description. And guys, thanks for coming out in the garage and doing some TRX stuff with me. And guys, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time.